Hey guys, Kevin here with the Mix Coach. Today I want to show you a plugin that I've been using a little bit lately, and I'm really liking it. It's a Saturator plugin from PSP. Let me just kind of tell you a little bit about what it does. First of all, if you're unsure about it and you want to just go with presets, which is kind of where I advocate going a lot of times, as long as you don't spend a lot of time there, you can definitely look at the presets and get an idea of what you like and what they're doing to get what you like. Now, just a caveat here, don't do this as you're mixing. Do this on another day. Take a practice day, as I always advocate. Don't try to do this when you're mixing, because you will confuse your ears, and it will not be pretty. You'll have to take a big break and then figure out what you actually do like. I've done that, believe me, I'm telling you from experience. So with that being said, on a day that you're not mixing, why don't you try this? First of all, let's go to the presets, and there's actually two different modes of presets. You can go by application, so you can look at all the presets you have here. You can hit the mix. You can, so those are a bunch of presets for the mixing. Here's a mastering set, valve tube, if you want to emulate, going through some hot tube stuff and really kind of getting that warm saturation. Here's some tape machine stuff. If you really want to drive it, you can go here, vocals, bass guitar, and it just goes on and on. So it's actually got a clipper on the end of it, and pretty drastic form of saturation. But if you mix it in, which I'll show you in a second, this could really work pretty well. Okay, so the second one is designer. Now there are guys on here who have taken time to actually go in and design presets that they like. So let's say if we went to Ronan Chris Murphy here, Apocalypse Ambience, I don't know, bass stoner rock. I mean, so if you wanted to go through there and try out some of his Michael Brower, there's a good one right there. Mr. Compression uses the Saturator here, and he's got some presets. So if you would rather go by designer or application, kind of check out what they're doing. Then if you like it, you can save it, and when you save it, it'll end up in your presets. So on game day, when it comes to mixing, what you can do is just go in and pull up the presets that you like, that you know are going to work, so you can just kind of keep moving forward with the mix. Okay, so there's always the presets you can use to get going with them. Now, working down the PSP, here's a couple things that you need to know about it. The metering. This switch is for the metering. This is this is what's going into the saturator. This is the drive just before the saturator circuit, I think. This is what you're sending into it. And then this is post. This is after the saturation. So basically, I'm assuming that it's pre-input, post-output sort of thing. This sort of drive and post. Okay, pre is just as it's coming into the saturator. Okay, so working on down here, saturation. This is the amount of saturation. Now it's divided into two areas of frequencies, and that's lows and highs. They named them warmth and softness. So in the warmth, you can go from 20 hertz all the way up to 400 hertz. This kind of covers all that lows and kind of low mids. This is the level, how much level you can add. So if you double click and it's 0, you're not really adding a ton of level to it. Let's just say you've got warmth. You've got a little warmth going on here at a certain frequency, and you want to add more of it. Just crank it up there. You can see how much is going on. If you hit this LED right here, you can see that it starts to light up a little bit the more you dig into it. Same with the saturation, same with the softness. So if you just want to mess with the highs, you can just turn the lows off and just mess with the highs there. So we'll leave them both on for now. Now the shape basically there's several modes that you can use. Basically left to right is, the more right you go, the more non-subtle it is. The left is, well, there's none to begin with, and then you go to soft valve, medium valve, hard valve, and then you go to tapes, and then you ram. That is, I think that has to do with the saturation curve, and then you've got soft clip and then hard clip. So the more further right you go, the more drastic it is, just like any good piece of audio gear is, right? It seems like. So going further down to the left, the processor, if you turn it on and off, as you can see, the LEDs come on, the meters come on and off, so you can turn it on and off. It's an easy way to find out what you're doing to it. Now, if you really want, if you're going for like an effect and you really want to like heat it up a lot, maybe even distort something with it pretty drastically, this is your friend here. So you can push the input as hard as you want to, and the further you push it, the more distorted it's going to get. Mix, if you're going for a parallel compression or parallel processing, then you'd want to listen to the mix 100%, find out what you're doing, probably back it down a little bit, or once you get a saturation dialed in, you'd want to kind of mix it a little bit. Let's say you're doing a snare, you're really crushing a snare, but now you're losing your attack and your punchiness of it. You can dial this back a little bit and get the original unprocessed signal and add it to the saturated signal. Okay, the output, where you would you don't want to mess up anything after the fact by making the output so loud that it distorts something down the line, that it makes a compressor pump on the next processor or in the mix bus. So you'd want to make sure that the output is pulled down enough. And then I guess this is where you would hit post, kind of dial in your output a little bit, make sure that you're around 0 VU, and that typically solves all your problems. Now, if you want to do something a little bit more clever, just hit this chain link right here, and it ties the input inverse to the output. So now the more you drive the input, the more it pulls the output down, what we all wish every 1176 did, right? This is not 1176. This is the same principle of input and output, and they're independent. So if you hit this chain link right here, they are linked together, and it doesn't matter where you do it. Let's just say you decided that this is where you wanted to start. Now you hit this, and it's tied relative to where you hit the chain link. Okay. And now this here is another saturation circuit. You can hit limiter, and it will be a little bit more. It will square off waves. Saturation will kind of round them off a little bit and off. You don't have this level of you don't have the extra level of saturation going here. Okay, so one more thing I want to show you. Now this is beyond my area of expertise, but this has oversampling in it. Now these resistors don't really do anything, at least as far as I can tell, but you definitely have oversampling here, so you can actually turn oversampling on, which if you have the DSP to do it, and you can hear the difference in all the stuff of oversampling, and you want that feature, you can actually turn this on. It's I think it's normally off unless it's turned on with a preset. You can sidechain the high pass filter, and you can make it smooth, and here's the makeup gain for such a thing. And again, this resistor probably doesn't work. Okay, so in this here, you can do high pass filter post or pre. I don't know if it's post or pre saturation, but anyway, there's that. You don't have to look at that. You can just hit close, or you can hit open again and it will close. Just know that it's there if you really want to get under the hood and tweak a little bit. Now I've got a song pulled up that we're mixing in Mix Coach Member now called Sing Me Back Home from Wade Spencer. It's an old Waylon Jennings song, and it's kind of old country music. So a lot of the tutorials that I've seen on this PSP Saturator have been more EDM tech music. So this is going to be a little bit more of a kind of a more old school approach to saturation. In other words, what vintage compressors did, what tape did. So we're going to take that approach. So with that in mind, what I've got is I've got a couple of tracks that I'm just going to experiment with here, and you're probably going to see this in real time a little bit. I've experimented with this some, but I'm going to just let you see kind of my approach of doing this. Okay. So first of all, I'm just going to unbypass it, and we're going to find an application that we like. So let's go to bass, and I think this bass is actually me playing, and it's through a Music Man Stingray, and there's probably more low end on it than needs to be in this track. So I'm actually going to do the opposite of what you think I do with a saturator. A lot of times people want to use a saturator to add more low end to it. to add depth to it. I'm actually going to try to do this and take away some of the low end and add some finger noise. So what we're going to do, let's just listen to a couple of these presets here, fuzz bass, and it's 100%. It's 100%. So what we're hearing is my signal 100% through this processor. Okay. Probably not the one. Okay, we don't want a fuzz bass on this one. Okay, so I'm gonna look for something. I think I pulled up stoner rock before. There's some growl. Now I like that, and as you can see, the Mr. Brower there. We may come back to 15 there. Okay, so see, that one has a little bit of the stringy noise that I'm looking for, and it's already taken away some of the low end. So why don't we take that synth bass one? You wouldn't think that it would be on a country music song that this would be the case. So as you can see, these are already tied together here, so we can actually drive the input to get more of this effect. And let's try that real quick. You know, I liked it where it was, so, but you know, we had to experiment. But did you notice that the level didn't go up as we pushed the input? The output was kind of pulled back, and that's this little chain link. It's really cool. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is I want to add a little bit more of that. It sounds like there's a lot being added to that fingery noise, which is, if you can see, the 2701. That's 2K, almost 3K. Let's mess with that a little bit. Let's push it up. It's already up at 15 dB, or you know, up 15. I'm assuming that's 15 dB. So I pushed the softness up a little bit, which I'm making it harder by pushing up the softness, which I know doesn't make sense, but it's working. So we've got that 1.6K honk now that's happening. So here's the unprocessed signal. I'm going to pull the mix down to 0. So this is 100% bass right off tape. Now we'll push it up. Okay, so I feel like we've retained the bottom end that we wanted, but we're adding a little top end to it now with a saturator. So let's do bypassed, and then we'll turn it back on and see which one we like. We may not like it, I don't know. And I do like it. So anyway, there's one example of how you can use the PSP Saturator on bass to take out low end and make it smoother. Next, we've got a little steel guitar here, and I thought that the steel guitar was a little bit thin sounding, so I'm going to bypass this whole effects chain. First thing I'm going to let you hear, let me undo the bass here. Now that's kind of a thin, old school steel guitar. Well, first thing I did was added a little bit of Valhalla Verb to it. Actually, Valhalla Super Massive, which I think is pretty cool, especially for free plug-in. Adds a little dimension and depth because I think the steel was mono, and probably not a lot of effects on it since it's kind of an old school steel. So let's take a look at this PSP Saturator and what we did on that. Here's without it, and here's with it. So it did bump up the volume just a little bit, but what it added, if you notice, a note appeared that I hadn't heard before. It's a low note. All I heard was the high stuff. Listen. So that warms the steel up quite a bit for me. So, and of course we can drive it a little bit. Let's try that. I'm going to turn the chain link on, and we're going to drive the input and see if we can get it to be a little even less thin. Now, if I wanted to turn the chain link off and pull the output down just a little bit so that when I bypass it, that volume thing's not really happening, because that's one thing that can deceive you when you're using something like this, is that if it makes it louder, and this is something we've been dealing with as engineers forever, ever since multi-track recording began, and when they started recording records on a lathe in vinyl, the object was to make it louder. Radio, make it louder. CDs, make them louder. So, and it's because your ear will always perceive that loudness as being better. So we're going to turn the output down to make sure that what we're doing actually does sound better and not just louder, okay? So we pulled the output down. I'm going to turn that back on. We're going to start off without it. Next time is with it. Okay, so we're probably overdoing it a little bit with the input, but I do think this improves this signal a lot. It makes it a little bit warmer, and you know, I'll wait till later to let you hear this in the track, but in another tutorial. But so you can take low end away through a saturator, which you probably didn't think of a saturator as doing that. But all you're doing is saturating the top end, and you're adding more, you know, volume and more perceived loudness on a different frequency level. So the top end, if you don't have a lot of perceived loudness on the low end, you want to leave that alone, but you want to add perceived loudness to the top end. This saturator is a good way to do that, because you can saturate in two different frequency bands. Okay, so I think that was an improvement. Let's listen to the acoustic guitars, which are another thing that I struggled with a little bit on this song. Okay, so what I've done here is I've got two acoustic guitars, and I've got them panned hard left and right, and then on the guitar bus, I'm busing all the guitars to that guitar bus, and I've got a saturator on that guy. So right now it's bypassed. So let's take a listen to the acoustic guitars with no saturator. Now let's turn them on and see what we got. I don't remember where I left this, but okay. So what I'm hearing, what I typically do to acoustic guitars is I usually take out a little low end to make it sit in the track a little bit more, because there's acoustic guitars have a lot of low end in them anyway, especially the really high end, you know, Gibsons, and like my Breedlove over here has a ton of low end in it. Martin guitars are notorious for having a ton of low end in them, so you have to be careful. And when you add them to a mix that has a lot of low end in it already, kick drum, bass guitar, maybe a chesty vocal, what you want to do is kind of contain that low end. So let's try to do that here. This is acoustic guitar enhanced. Let's pull that back up. I pulled that preset up, and you notice that there's no star on it now, which means it's not been modified. I had modified it before. And let's experiment with this a little bit, okay? Let's see if we can get a little less low end again on this, and a little bit more definition on the strings without making it too zingy, okay? Okay, so what I did just then was I kind of listened to the low end, and I figured out where I thought was taking it away, pulled the level down. So now we're pulling the processing down. But then what I did is I took the level and I pushed it up, because, you know, if you want to reduce the pain, you got to if you want to reduce the pain, you got to find where the gain is. So what I did was I pushed it up, and then I moved the frequency around until I found that little boxy sounding acoustic guitar thing that I'm trying to get rid of, and then I pulled the level down. So I feel like I softened the low end just a little bit, or kind of cleaned up the low end just by with a saturator. So here's with it. And although that's pretty subtle, that definitely worked to take out some of the low end. I could probably take a little bit more out and think I will. And then now, so let's do the same thing with the top end, and let's try to add some warmth to the zinginess of the strings, okay? So I'm going to start off by pushing the level up, pushing the softness up, finding the frequency, and then doing what I need to do to pull that back out, okay? So that, to me, that's a really nice addition to the top end. It didn't get too stringy, too zingy. It's just a nice little bit of bump in the top end that feels pretty good. So let's try it without this, or let's try it with it, and then we'll go without it. Okay, so this is with it engaged. Okay, so it's still a pretty subtle change, but here's the thing about mixing. There are no like one broad brush stroke and everything's fixed. It's, thank goodness, that mixing, good mixing anyway, is all about all the little things that you do, that if you were to undo one of those things, nobody, probably including yourself, would even notice it. It's a bunch of little subtle things that you can do with plugins like this PSP Saturator that make your mix stand out and be unique. So let's listen one more time. This is without it. A little fuddy on their left-hand side there. And this time is going to be with the processing. I think it's a good improvement. So you have a 30-day window to try this thing out. You know, save some presets, see if you like it. If you don't, you know, in 30 days it will be of no concern to you. But I would say if you're looking for a way to have a good saturator and be able to warm up your mixes or tighten up your EQ curves on your mix with a saturator, this will be a great plugin to go to. So PSP Saturator, it's right here at pspaudioWare.com, and here's your 3-day demo, and this is the saturator. So hey, speaking of songs like this, if you want a really good library of songs to mix, people to mix them with, tutorials to mix from, and just a great community, check out Mixcoach Member. Until the end of the month, there is a free trial. Just like this, there's a 30-day trial that you can check it out. Go check out the songs, go meet some of the guys. If you like it, hang around. If you don't, there's no loss, or you have no risks. If you want to give it a try, go to mixcoach.com/free-trial. The link is in the description below. You can check it out and check us out, okay? Hey, thanks for watching. Thank you, PSP, for sending me such a cool plugin to check out. I hope you like it, and hope to see you on the inside of Mixcoach Member.